when you have a question, who do you go to? Who is the person you trust to help you answer things? Now, it depends on the kind of question you've got. You might go to books, you might even go to a library, probably going to Google it. If you've got access to one, you might ask an expert. You're probably going to ask family and friends, probably going to go on social media, ask on Twitter or Facebook. There's lots of different ways that we can get an answer. And I wonder though, have you ever had a time where you were told something that you thought was absolutely impossible, not right, not wrong, it could never be that, no, wrong, and all your friends believe this other thing but you don't believe it, and then you've gone away and looked it up, you've maybe looked in a book, maybe you googled it, maybe you asked other people on social media, and the answers come back that you're wrong. Thomas found himself in just that position. So he'd missed Jesus' first appearance at the tomb, and then he missed the second one when Jesus appeared to the disciples in the locked room. And now, racked with grief and perhaps guilt, his friends are claiming that the guy he thought was dead is very much alive, very much well, and it isn't the end of the story. Impossible. But Thomas was a pragmatic man. He was very much a man of the earth. He liked to know how things worked and where things were going. And earlier in the story, we find that when Jesus said he was going to go and visit Lazarus' sisters after Lazarus had died, Thomas said that they should go with Jesus, knowing that the place that Jesus was going to would likely be the place where they'd face death. Equally, when Jesus speaks about returning to the Father and preparing a room for his disciples in the house with many rooms, and it's this wonderful depiction of heaven and the life that is to come, it's really interesting that it's Thomas that kind of interjects after Jesus says, you know where I'm going and you know how to get there, and it's Thomas that says, actually, how do we get there? Thomas represents most of us, I think. Thomas asks questions. He wants to understand. He has an intellect and a rationale, and he wants to apply these things to understanding what God's about. He wants to get it because he wants to be all in. But Thomas is already all in. Nobody who isn't all in says, let's go to the place where we could possibly lose our lives and die. So he's definitely already all in. So I think when that moment comes when Thomas is talking about, I'm not going to believe it until I see Jesus and I can put my fingers in the wounds, I don't think we're right in assuming that he has lost his faith, that his doubt, his questioning is a lack of faith. I think it's consistent with the person of Thomas, consistent with the person who is inquiring, trying to understand. The only way Thomas could resolve his particular question, his search for the truth, was to turn to the truth, to turn to Jesus. That was the only way he was going to get his answer. And in turning to Jesus, Thomas does indeed find his answer, and it's an answer that propels Thomas into a unique position in the New Testament. He's the only person who refers to Jesus as God, unequivocally. Other people use lots of titles which may or may not mean that they're referring to Jesus as God, but there is no question about the words that Thomas uses in this passage to refer to Jesus as God, which makes him unique. So in discovering the truth of Jesus as risen, he immediately becomes the person in the New Testament to declare unequivocally, Jesus is God. And it was a search for truth which would then transform the life of Thomas, propelling him into a life as a missionary. And so in a world in lockdown, the church is asking all sorts of questions about what does it mean to be a Christian in this new world? How do we proclaim the gospel afresh in this different world? And there is space for questions now. There is a searching, and this seems to be happening across the country as record numbers of people are now engaging with the church, with the Christian faith, and perhaps, hopefully, with Jesus. So let us ask questions. Let us share our stories of encounter with the risen Jesus. Let us return to Scripture as our guide and rediscover our relationship with Jesus in prayer. Be like Thomas. Ask questions. Let's search for the truth, and let us be all in with Jesus.